Well, Professor Geoffrey Garrett heads the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney, and he joins me now in the studio. Many thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
President Obama has explained very eloquently why he's gone to war, if you like, in Libya, but he hasn't explained how this is all going to conclude. Is that a problem?
I think it's a real problem. Obama's been trying a balancing act for weeks now on Libya, and critics say it's a sort of half-pregnant policy. It's pretty hard to be half-pregnant. It's pretty hard to see where what US involvement in the future in Libya is going to look like, particularly when conditions on the ground in Libya are so uncertain at the moment.
The sort of professorial approach, if you like, that he has, does it inspire confidence in Americans?
It's so interesting, isn't it? You know, 2 or 3 years ago, Barack Obama was this rock star campaigner and his oratory was supposed to be inspiring, and now you're calling him professorial. People have dubbed him the great ditherer. I don't think Obama has changed so much. What's changed is that the world is a complicated place and he doesn't have this aura that he had, you know, when he was a shooting star on the political scene.
But are there indications that the administration is preparing, has some kind of end plan in Libya?
No, that's the criticism. You know, what Obama has been trying to balance, and it's always a balancing act for American presidents, is on the one hand you need to have a very high bar to intervention, the sort of realist approach. We must know what the end game is. On the other hand, there's a call from the left and the right in American politics that says we've got to do the right thing in the world and intervention's the right thing. So what Obama has done is really from the playbook of Bill Clinton in the 1990s. Let's use airstrikes because Americans won't die, and then the critics say that's the half-pregnant criticism. You use the airstrikes, but that doesn't mean you're going to achieve your objectives.
What happens if there's a huge ratcheting up of the violence in Libya?
It's a real problem for Obama and I think for the world. You know, the coalition is really now being led by David Cameron in the UK and President Sarkozy in France, not by Barack Obama. In Obama's speech earlier this week, he said the US should play a supporting role, not the lead role. And that just doesn't sit easily, I don't think, with a world in which American defence spending is more than half of total defence spending, and in the past 20 years effective international military action has had to be led by the United States.
I was going to ask you about the international perception of this. I mean, if, for example, there is a ratcheting up of violence, is there going to be more pressure on Obama to play a stronger role?
Also fascinating, I think. You know, critics of George Bush over the last 10 years said that the problem with the US was it was this in-your-face unilateralism. Obama has now said, I'm part of the international team and I don't even want to lead that. So at first blush you'd think that the international community would be very supportive of Obama, but now if things go from bad to worse in Libya and the US is called upon to do more, Obama has really boxed himself into a corner where it's going to be extremely hard for him to do that, not only because of the international realities, but because of the domestic ones in which Americans are more concerned than ever before about foreign intervention, not only because they're in 2 wars, but because the budget is bleeding so much red ink.
And just finally on Syria, again a developing situation there. What would the US administration be thinking, given some years ago it was the US's traditional enemy?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Syria is considered a conduit for Iranian action, certainly in Lebanon. I think if we look at this remarkable winter as it's been in North Africa and the Middle East, the countries that are most vulnerable to people power are those with ageing regimes that don't have much legitimacy and critically don't have much oil. I mean, Libya is a bit of an exception, but Syria in some respects looks a little more like Egypt. So what the US would surely be hoping for in Syria is that people power would work. The problem comes, as it's come in Libya, if the government resists, and who knows how that would play out.
Professor Geoffrey Garrett from the US Studies Centre at Sydney University, many thanks for coming in today.
My pleasure as always.